Okay, so it looks like it'll only be you two today, Cyrus and Henry. Anyways, we'll get started. So let's take a look at this warm-up question. So it says, tornadoes are natural disasters that often destroy everything in their path. Now, what do you know about natural disasters, and why is it important to study these kinds of events? So think about, what do you know about natural disasters? So anything you know about them? Hi there, Chloe. Thanks for joining today. So we are getting started with this warm-up question. So what do you know about natural disasters, and why is it important to study these kind of events? So I'll give you a second to think about it, and we'll do a little discussion. Okay, Cyrus, what do you think? It looks like you were unmuted, but I didn't hear what you were saying. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what do you think? Oops, sorry. Okay. All right. Anyways, as I was saying, so we'll start with this warm-up text. Sorry about that. Okay. Cyrus says, extreme sudden events caused by environmental factors such as storms, floods, droughts, fires, and heat waves. All right. Okay. So that's a good start. So that's what you know about natural disasters. And how about why is it important to study these kind of events? Chloe, what do you think? Anything? So you can answer either of these two questions. No? Okay, what about you, Henry? You can type in the chat if you want. Chloe says, I don't know. Okay, think about natural disasters. Can you, for instance, give me an example of one? I have one on my screen over here. So, like, examples of natural disasters could be, tornadoes. Yes, exactly. Sarah says, allows you to know in advance how best to prepare for the disaster. Yes, very well. Landslides. Yes, that is a very good example. Landslides are also an example of, well, more like a minor natural disaster. Landslide. And what Cyrus is saying, and what actions you can take in the aftermath. Yes, very good. So by examining or studying these kind of natural disasters, we get to have better knowledge of what to expect and how to better prepare for them, right? Okay, so today's lesson will be mainly focusing on figure out the meaning of unknown words. So as you might be reading a text or like a book or something, you might come across words that you do not know. So here's a chance for you to become a word detective and look at some clues that the author might have given you to figure out the meaning of these words, right? So those clues are what are called context clues. Okay, you might hear people saying, what's the context, right? So to figure out these context clues, you could reread the sentence the word is in, or reread the sentences around the word. So looking at the pieces of information that are around the word. Okay. So let me give you an example by looking at the first paragraph of our text today. Okay, so today's text is called The World's Weirdest Natural Disasters. Okay, starting over here. In West Africa, a lake spits out a cloud, and hours later, over 1,000 people are dead. A fireball lands in Russia with the force of 185 atomic bombs, and a volcanic explosion in one part of the world creates a year's worth of terrible weather around the globe. Weird, right? Most of us think of natural disasters as things like hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and floods. But these aren't the only kinds of disasters that people have had to deal with in the past. And while any kind of natural disaster can cause destruction, injuries, and deaths, history tells us there's a collection of natural disasters that can only be classified as weird. Okay, so let's say I don't know what this word means. So classified. Well, one way you can figure it out is look at the words that are around this. So here I see over here, history tells us there's a collection of natural disasters that can only be classified as weird. Okay, so I can tell that there's something to do with this word here. And I also see that earlier here it gives like a list of hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and floods. So I'm guessing I can make an inference that there's some sort of category that fits into the normal of what we call, like what we're used to, like the natural disasters that we usually think of, and also the category of natural disasters that we don't usually think of. So I can guess that this word classified can be organizing into different kinds of categories. Okay, so that's a way of figuring out the definitions of these words. Alrighty? Okay, let's continue reading this article. Who would like to start reading here? Okay, Rin, would you like to read over here, please?
Imagine an entire year with temperatures so low that few crops can grow, and there is snow or frost every single month. Well, that happened. The year was 1815, and in North America it became known as the year without a summer, or the year 1800, and froze to death. Rivers and lakes were covered with ice in July and August. 18 inches of snow fell in New England in July. Birds froze to death and fell out of the sky. There were food shortages. People couldn't find enough firewood to heat their homes.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so here is one example of a weird natural disaster. Okay, so first it's introducing it with giving you an example of what it might look like. So think of an entire year that's totally, completely cold, where the entire Earth is so cold that there is snow everywhere and there's frost everywhere, and that's happening like for the entire year. And this actually happened. So it happened in 1815 in North America. It became known as the year without a summer because it was so cold. It was also called 1800 and froze to death, okay, because obviously it's super cold and there's not enough heat, or like you can kind of think of it as like the Ice Age, where it's so cold you can barely have enough food to eat and things like that. Okay, so some examples of how this natural disaster impacted everything around them was like rivers and lakes were covered with ice in July and August. 18 inches of snow fell in New England in July. Okay, so because like usually in those months you think it's summer, where usually there's no snow around there, but in those usually summer months there's snow on the ground, literally, right? So birds froze to death and fell out of the sky. So you can just imagine those birds falling out of the sky, and how you can think about how really severe this event was. Okay, and people couldn't find enough firewood to heat their homes, right? Okay, continuing on this next paragraph, Chloe, can you continue reading over here?
Had caused such terrible weather. It was something that happened on the other side of the world, on the island of Sumbawa in Indonesia. On April 10, 1815, Mount Tambora exploded in the biggest volcanic eruption that the world has ever seen. It spewed ash, stone, and volcanic rock, enough to cover a 200 square mile area, 12 feet deep. It killed 12,000 people, but the effects of the tamborics went far beyond Indonesia. A huge amount of ash, dust, and various gases were set 10 miles into the air. It created a cloud so dense that it reflected sunlight away from the Earth and cooled its atmosphere
Mm-hmm.
by a half degree. Temperatures fell all over the world, and people in Europe, North America, and Asia were starved. It took 3 years for the effect of 1815 volcano to completely disappear and for temperatures to return to normal.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chloe. Okay, so in this paragraph, we actually get to see what caused this terrible weather. So, what caused the entire year to become so cold? So, over here it says it was something that happened on the other side of the world, on the island of Sumbawa in Indonesia. So, on April 10, 1815, the biggest volcanic eruption happened ever, like the biggest ever, uh, ever seen. So, it spewed ash, stone, and volcanic rock, enough to cover a 200 square mile area, 12 feet deep, and this caused 12,000 people. However, that's not the end of it. Okay, since it spewed so much ash and dust and things like that, it actually covered the sun. Like, think about the Earth and how much dust that this volcano actually created. So here's like a image representing it. So all this much dust covering the sun, and since it's so thick, it's so dense that it's blocking out the sun, and it actually cooled the Earth by like half a degree, as mentioned over here. Okay, it cooled its atmosphere by half a degree. Temperatures fell all over the world, and people in Europe, North America, and Asia were starved because the plants can't grow in this kind of weather. Okay, it took 3 years for the effects of the 1815 volcano to completely disappear and for temperatures to return to normal. So, although this is a volcanic eruption, and we usually think of those, this event was so big it caused quite a disruption throughout the world. So, that's why it's included here. Okay, moving on, the Tunguska event. Cyrus, would you like to read here, please?
Sure. So, which part is it?
Over here.
It was June in the year 1908, just past 7 a.m., and a man was sitting on his porch in Vanarov, Siberia, a remote area in Russia. Suddenly, he was thrown from chair, and a wave of heat rolled over him, hot enough that he thought his shirt was on fire. There was a deafening bang, and a fiery ball streaked across the across the sky 40 miles from where the man had been sitting. An asteroid had entered Earth's atmosphere at a speed of 33,500 miles per hour. It became so hot that it exploded 28,000 feet above the Earth in a remote place called Tunguska.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Cyrus. Okay, so here's another event. This is describing an event where an asteroid actually entered the Earth's atmosphere at quite a large speed, actually, 33,500 miles per hour. That is very, very fast. Okay, so it's giving a very individual kind of situation. Okay, so it's like starting with 1908, just past 7 a.m. It's being very descriptive here. A man sitting on his porch in Venevera, Siberia, in a remote area in Russia. Okay, so you can kind of visualize this. There's this man sitting on his porch. It's a remote area far away from other populous places. And then suddenly he was thrown from his chair and a wave of heat rolled over him, hot enough that he thought his shirt was on fire. Okay, so if you can imagine, say if you were in this situation, you're sitting on your porch step or something like that, and then suddenly there's this huge wave of heat rolling over, and you think it's so hot that you think your shirt is on fire. Well, that is quite something, right? So there was a deafening bang, so something so loud that it's almost deafening. Okay, and this fiery ball streaked across the sky. It's a meteorite. So this asteroid had entered Earth's atmosphere at a speed of 33,500 miles per hour. It became so hot that it exploded 28,000 feet above the Earth in a remote place called Tunguska. And that's why it's called the Tunguska event. Okay, Kairin, would you like to continue reading here, please?
The explosion, which scientists call a meteor airburst, was as powerful as 185 atomic bombs and ripped apart 800 square miles of forest. 80 million trees were instantly flattened in a circular pattern. People and animals close to the site were either injured or died. Even 100 miles away from the impact, windows shattered in houses. Sensors as far away as England recorded the shockwaves. Scientists believe it is the largest asteroid to hit Earth in modern times.
Thank you, Kairin. Very nice reading. Okay, some more information we are given here. This explosion, which scientists call a meteor airburst, was as powerful as 185 atomic bombs. Okay, so that would explain why this man thought his shirt was on fire and how loud this was, and really how fast this was going. So that is very, very powerful. So and ripped apart 800 square miles of forest. Wow, because a mile is very long, and 800 square miles of forest, that is also very large as well. So 80 million trees were instantly flattened in a circular pattern. So like think about the radius. Say for example, if the asteroid or the meteor hit over here, then like all trees within this area would be instantly flattened. People and animals close to the site were either injured or died because of this meteor entering the Earth, causing quite a disruption. And even 100 miles away from the impact, windows shattered in houses. So this really shows you what an impact this meteor had. And as well, sensors as far away as England recorded the shockwaves. Okay, and then it says scientists believe it is the largest asteroid to hit Earth in modern times. Okay, so usually you don't really see meteorites entering the Earth's atmosphere because the Earth's atmosphere is actually quite a protection to the Earth. Like usually things that go through are usually burned up very quickly, but this one is an exception because this meteorite, I think it was going too fast for it to burn up, but even still, it still exploded and it still created quite a shock and impacted a lot of people, as you can see. Okay, moving on here, the Lake Nyos disaster in Cameroon. Chloe, would you like to continue reading here? Sorry.
The Lake Nyos was a serene blue lake in the West African country of Cameroon.
Yep.
The people who lived near the lake were farmers who raised cattle and grew food for their families. But on the peaceful evening of August 21, 1986, Lake Nyos became deadly. Farmers living nearby heard a rumbling sound and suddenly a frothy plume of spray shot out of the water, hundreds of feet into the air. A white cloud formed above the lake and began drifting across the water and onto land.
Thank you, Chloe. Okay, so here's another example of a weird disaster. So this is Lake Nyos, which was a serene blue lake in the West African country of Cameroon. Okay, so maybe it looked something like this. So the people who lived there were farmers, and they raised cattle and grew food, as normal farmers do. But then, on this peaceful evening of August 21st, 1986, Lake Nyos became deadly. How? Well, farmers living nearby heard a rumbling sound, and suddenly a frothy plume of spray shot out of the water hundreds of feet into the air. Okay, so what is the spray? Well, it says here, a white cloud formed above the lake and began drifting across the water and onto the land. Okay, so what is this white cloud? Let's continue reading. Cyrus, could you continue reading here, please?
Various farmers came out of their homes to see what had happened. Many of them immediately fell unconscious. The cloud continued drifting and soon covered a deep valley. The people there, those both inside and outside their home, instantly collapsed and died. Cattle also died in the field. It continued like this as the cloud kept moving people and animals as far as 15 miles away from the lake, collapsed and died. On August 23, the cloud finally lifted. It left behind only a few survivors, people who would wake at various times to find themselves surrounded by dead bodies. A total of 1,800 people were killed.
Okay, wow. So, what an impact this white cloud, made. Okay, so this is describing what happened to them, to the people around. So, these curious farmers came out to see what had happened because it created this kind of sound, right? It also made this plume of spray that shot out of this lake. So, immediately they fell unconscious. Okay, and while the cloud continued drifting, it soon covered a deep valley, and the people there, those both inside and outside their homes, instantly collapsed and died. Okay, so what is going on here? It also describes cattle that also died in the fields, and people and animals alike, all within 15 miles away from the lake, also collapsed and died. And on August 23rd, the cloud finally lifted, and only left a few survivors left who were surrounded by dead people. Okay, so this is something very weird indeed, right? So what is this white cloud that formed? Kairen, would you like to continue reading here?
Why was the Lake Nile's cloud so deadly? Scientists discovered that it was made of carbon dioxide, CO2, mixed with air. When there is too much CO2, it replaces the oxygen in the body's cells. This causes suffocation, unconsciousness, and can lead to death. As the cloud kept moving, the amount of CO2 increased, killing people instantly. Researchers finally found a layer of CO2 on the bottom of the lake, but they have been unable to discover where it came from. A bubble of the CO2 was released when a rock slide took place on the shore. This forced the lake to burn up the CO2, which sprayed into the air and created a deadly cloud.
Thank you, Tyrion. Okay, so now we finally know what caused this. So it's because the carbon dioxide mixed with the air. Okay, so it's because there was too much carbon dioxide that was released, right? No worries, Emma. I'm glad you finally made it. Okay, so anyway, as I was saying, since there was too much carbon dioxide, when you breathe in too much carbon dioxide, it actually replaces the oxygen in the body cells. Right, so maybe you may have learned that you breathe in oxygen and you breathe out carbon dioxide. But when there's not enough oxygen, or when you breathe in too much carbon dioxide, could actually be very harmful because it can cause like suffocation, unconsciousness. You don't have enough oxygen for your brain to function, which is why this happens. And if you don't have enough oxygen for a long period of time, this could cause death. Okay, so as this cloud kept moving, the amount of CO2 increased, and which resulted in killing more people instantly. So researchers finally found a layer of CO2 on the bottom of the lake, but they were unable to discover where it came from. Okay, so they found out this, but they're kind of unsure of where it came from, because like you're thinking there's this lake here, why doesn't this happen to other lakes, right? So a bubble of the CO2 was released when a rock slide took place on the shore. So there's all this carbon dioxide that's dissolved in the lake, and then all of a sudden, because this rock slide, it kind of displaces the water a bit and changes, like, say, the pressure, or changes the lake somehow, and it kind of forced the lake to burp up this carbon dioxide, which was quite concentrated there, and this resulted in this, which sprayed into the air and created this deadly cloud. Okay. Emma, would you like to finish this off?
Today, Lake Nyos is no longer blue. It is now shallow and has turned a rusty color because of dark brown water that came up from the lake's bottom with a spray. Scientists have installed huge plastic pipes in the lakes that constantly bring water from the bottom to the surface. This lets the CO2 slowly bubble out and dissolve so it won't burp out again and cause another tragedy in the future.
Thank you, Emma. Okay, so now we're kind of going to the present day, where we're looking at this Lake Nyos. So unfortunately, it's no longer blue because of this event, right? Since the dark brown water kind of came up from the lake's bottom with a spray, so it's actually now shallower, and scientists have installed huge plastic pipes in the lake that constantly bring water from the bottom to the surface. So this kind of goes into a bit of chemistry. See, if you think about when you open a can of soda or like Coca-Cola, right? Since it's quite pressurized in the can, but then when you open up the can, this releases the pressure, and the carbon dioxide actually goes out, right? So it's because of this release of pressure that the carbon dioxide goes out of solution, or yeah. So it's kind of like that can of soda. So these pipes are constantly bringing the water from the bottom to the surface, and this decreases the pressure, and thus the carbon dioxide is slowly bubbled out and dissolved. So it's like bubbled out of the water, so there's no kind of concentration that's left at the bottom of the lake. Okay, and that concludes this article. Any comments or questions here? If not, we'll continue. Okay, so since our lesson was trying to figure out the meaning of unknown words, let's see how well you do in this little activity. So here I have a form, and I want to see how well we do in figuring out the meanings of words or synonyms in context. Okay, so I'll post this link in the chat, and there are 4 questions, very short questions, and I want you to pick the right answer. Let's see. Actually, let me show you right now. Okay, so the questions are quite short, so I want you to read. They're taken out of the article, and I want you to figure out the synonyms for the words that are in bold. Say like destruction, is it failure, wildlife damage, or accident? Okay, so there are just 4 questions, and I want to see how well we do here. Okay, so I'll be giving you about 4 or 3 minutes on this. Okay, about 1 minute left. Okay, let's take this up. So it looks like I got 3 responses. So question 1. What is the best meaning of the word destruction as it is used in the sentence? So and while any kind of natural disaster can cause destruction, injuries, and deaths, history tells us there is a collection of, there is a collection of natural disasters that can only be classified as weird. Okay, so the correct answer would be damage, right? So if you replace the word destruction with damage, it would make a lot of sense. Like natural disasters can cause damage, injuries, and deaths, right? Okay, so damage would be the right answer. Question 2, what is the best meaning of the word impact as it is used in this paragraph? Let's see. So the explosion, which scientists call a meteor airburst, was as powerful as 185 atomic bombs and ripped apart 800 square miles of forest. 80 million trees were instantly flattened in a circular pattern. People and animals close to the site were either injured or died. Even 100 miles away from the impact, windows shattered in houses. Sensors as far away as England recorded the shock waves. Scientists believe it is the largest asteroid to hit Earth in modern times. Okay, so the word I'm pretty sure was, hang on, let me go back to the questions. Okay, so the word that we were looking for was impact. Okay, so looking at the sentence, even 100 miles away from the impact, windows shattered in houses. Okay, so the word that works best is crash, right? So you can think about, like, since the meteor is entering the Earth's atmosphere, it's kind of giving a big impact or like causing quite a bit of destruction. So harm would be like a more generalized word for it, although it would make sense, like even 100 miles away from the harm. It doesn't actually make a lot of sense. The word that would best fit in here would be crash. Okay. Moving on to question 3, what is the best meaning of the word dense as it is used here? So over here it says it created a cloud so dense that it reflected the sunlight. Okay, so it's not cold, strange, or dangerous, although it is dangerous, the cause and effect that it's causing. But since it's so dense that it's reflecting the sunlight, it's not allowing sunlight to go in, that would be the right answer here. And last one, what does the word spood show about what happened on the island of Sumbawa in 1815? Okay, so we're looking at the word spood. So it would be over here. So it's spewed ash, stone, and volcanic rock, enough to cover a 200 square mile area, 12 feet deep. Okay, so the answer would be this one. The volcano expelled ash, stone, and volcanic rock in large amounts. It's not saying that the volcano is made out of that or it drained. You don't really hear people say lava drained out of the volcano. That would be like draining a bathtub, which would make more sense there, but not in this context. And the volcano stirring out ash, stone, and rock, that doesn't make too much sense either, so the correct answer would be expelling. Okay. Any questions here? Okay, let's move on to some vocabulary. Cyrus, would you like to read these words out loud?
Read which one?
Everything here. So starting at classified.
Classified adjective to groups or order and class. Remote adjective far from towns or areas where people live. Deafening verbs to be filled with noise. Serene adjective, free from trouble, calm. Long of dust, smoke, noun, a tall, thin mass of smoke, dust, or similar substance that rise in the air. Unconscious adjective, not aware or awake.
Thank you, Cyrus. Okay, so let's put these into action. So we have these blanks, and we'll fill in these blanks with our vocabulary words. Okay, starting with the first one. They live in a blank corner of Scotland, miles away from the nearest shop. So which word would this be? Chloe says remote. You are correct. So they live in a remote corner of Scotland, miles away from the nearest shop. So they live away from populous areas. Okay, next one. The books in the library are blank by subject. Very good. Chloe and Emma, you have the correct answer. That would be classified by subject. So they're organized by subject, right? Okay, question 3. After the explosion, a blank of smoke could be seen in the sky miles around. What would this be? Very good. That would be plume. So a plume of smoke could be seen in the sky miles around. If you take French, this would also mean like shaped in the shape of a feather. Okay, this is literally the French word for feather. So sometimes you might see this word being used for describing an object that's in the shape of a feather. Okay. And next one, he approached the job with blank confidence that he could succeed where others had failed. This is a bit trickier. Chloe says deafening. Would that make sense in this context? He approached the job with deafening confidence. Not really, right? Yes, Emma?
Serene.
Serene, yes, very good. So remember how Serene was calm, without any worries, right? So he's so confident that he's totally worryless, that he thinks he can succeed. Okay. Next, she was hit on the head by a stone and knocked blank. Okay, very good. The word would be unconscious, and I'm guessing Emma, you were going to say that. Yes, and okay, last one. We could hear the blank sound of the explosions as the missiles hit. Kaiben, what do you think about this? So would it be deafening, unconscious, remote, plume, classified, or serene? So something to do with hearing, right? Sorry, could you repeat that? Yes, deafening. So we could hear the deafening sound of the explosions as the missiles hit. Alright, moving on, we have a video that describes the most dangerous lake in the world. Remember how we read about Lake Nyos? This video also mentions it, and it also goes more into detail about why some lakes have like this concentration of carbon dioxide in the bottom. Okay, so let's take a look.
There are millions of lakes in the world, and Canada is home to over 60% of them. Fortunately for Canadians, though, none of these lakes are anywhere near as bad as the most dangerous one in the world, which is actually located here in Africa between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda. This is Lake Kivu, and if you look at pictures of it on Google, it doesn't really look all that dangerous, so what gives? It's kind of a big lake, I guess. It's the 9th deepest lake in the world too, but that means that there's 8 more that are even deeper. There's other lakes like this one that's literally called Boiling Lake because the temperature can get up to 92 degrees Celsius. So what makes the innocent looking Lake Kivu so dangerous? It probably has something to do with the fact that the lake seems to occasionally explode and kill everything around it. But how does that happen? A lake exploding sounds pretty weird, but it's because it doesn't happen very often. The first time in recorded history that we observed something like this was just back in 1984 at another African lake here, Lake Manoon. On August 15th of that year, local people reported hearing a loud noise and seeing a gas cloud emanating from the lake. 37 people ended up dying with reports of skin discoloration, which led investigators to initially believe that the incident was a terrorist attack. But 2 years later, the nearby Lake Nyos experienced a very similar but even more catastrophic event. Here's what really happened in both cases. The lakes were completely saturated with gases like CO2. This CO2 may have come from volcanic gas below the lakes or from the decomposition of organic materials, but the end result of a high concentration of the gas in the water is the same. Before the lake becomes saturated though, it behaves much like an unopened soft drink, meaning that the CO2 is dissolved in the water. In both the lake and the soft drink, CO2 dissolves much more readily at higher pressure. This is why bubbles in a can of soda form only after the can is opened. The pressure is released and so the CO2 comes out of solution. In the case of lakes, the bottom experiences way higher pressure than the surface. The deeper it is, the higher the pressure at the bottom is. This means that huge amounts of CO2 can be dissolved in large, deep lakes like both of these were. CO2 also dissolves much more readily in cooler water, like at the bottom of a lake. So once a lake is saturated with CO2 like this, it becomes extremely unstable. All it takes is a trigger event like a volcano, earthquake, or explosion to set the whole thing off. Whatever the cause, the trigger event pushes the saturated water higher into the lake where the low pressure can't keep the CO2 contained anymore. Bubbles start forming at the surface, a column of gas erupts on top, the water at the bottom is pulled up by suction which causes a runaway loss of CO2 and an eventual explosion. Imagine shaking a can of soda and opening it, but on an epically bigger scale. At Lake Nyos, this event happened in the middle of the night and sent a 25-meter high tsunami surging into the other side of the beach. The lake turned a deep red and a 1.2 cubic kilometer toxic gas cloud of CO2 started migrating off the water and into the nearby villages. Because CO2 is denser than air, it has a bad tendency to stick to the ground while pushing breathable air up. As a result, when the cloud entered the surrounding villages, people couldn't breathe and experienced severe CO2 poisoning. Nearly everyone around the lake that night died, and people as far away as 25 kilometers even suffered from it. In all, over 1,700 people lost their lives in the catastrophe, as well as thousands of cattle and wild animals. But as bad as all of that was, the potential for the same thing happening at Lake Kivu would be a lot worse. These lake explosions are called limnic eruptions, and Lake Kivu has the exact same symptoms that the previous two lakes had. The only differences are that Lake Kivu is a lot bigger and has a lot more gas built up inside of it. 65 cubic kilometers of methane and 256 cubic kilometers of CO2. 2 million people live around the shores of the lake, and if an eruption were to happen here, all of their lives would be in jeopardy. Even creepier though, geologists operating around the lake discovered evidence that suggested a local extinction event happens about once every 1,000 years that wipes out a large part of the local wildlife. If it's the lake exploding once every 1,000 years like it seems, well, that's pretty bad news. So what are we doing to fix this problem? Not really anything at all right now. The Rwandan government extracts a lot of methane from it for energy purposes, but it's probably not enough to guarantee that the disaster won't ever happen. At the first two lakes I talked about, they've installed a series of pipes to release the gas above the surface, but since Lake Kivu is so much bigger, that may not be as practical. Releasing that much gas would be 2% of the annual amount humanity releases from burning fossil fuels, and it would cost millions of dollars to do, which the neighboring countries may not be so willing to spend. The solution to the most dangerous lake in the world remains elusive, and with no clear answer in sight, it may only be a matter of time until another disaster happens.
Okay, so there is the end of the video. Hopefully you're not feeling too, I guess, down, because this is actually reality. And this lake, as mentioned in the video, since it's super large, it's actually not that effective as like the other two lakes that were previously mentioned, since they were a lot smaller. So you can't really like go in there and install some pipes and fix that problem. Ta-da. Yeah, exactly. Like Emma says, my goodness, right? It's kind of a big problem, and it might be just like a matter of time before another explosion happens. And although they are kind of extracting methane from the lake, it might not be enough to stop things like these from happening. So this kind of gives you an idea of how natural disasters are still happening around the world. And although our human technology is still evolving, we still have problems around the world, right? Okay, let's move on to some discussion questions. Okay, so how do you think it felt to be one of the people who survived the natural disasters described in the article, and why? So say if you survived one of them, and so if you survived one of them, how would you feel? So like everyone else, most other people haven't. So how would you feel in this kind of situation? Go ahead, Emma.
I would like if I was in this situation, I'll feel very scared because because I'm because I might like have big problems because of this extreme weather.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's like you can't really breathe properly, and sometimes you may freeze to death or like become very like become like faint because it's too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's like if you were to go through one of these situations, it would be very scary. Like, so Chloe says scary because you couldn't breathe. Yeah, so like in the example of, I think you're referring to the one with the lake, right? So yeah, it would be very scary if you're living through it, right? Like if other people aren't going to survive, and say like you're probably one of the only ones left. Like if you lose your loved ones, then that would also be very heartbreaking, and also very scary. Like you don't have the people that you know around you anymore, and that would be quite traumatic, right? Um, do we have anything else to add here? No? Okay, next one. So, do you think learning about weird natural disasters like this makes you feel more or less afraid of nature, and why? So, now that we learned about these weird natural disasters, are you more or less afraid of nature? Emma?
It makes sorry, my mic was like I
Mm-hmm.
said it when my mic was off. Um, I I think learning about this weird disaster will make me feel a bit less afraid because now I understand how this happens, and like later on I know like maybe how to deal with it. Maybe I can understand how to deal with it and then know how to survive in these weird natural disasters.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So I like how you're saying how when you're learning more, you become less afraid because you know how they happen, and you could plan to um, how to protect yourself whenever those things happen, or say like yeah, like how to protect yourself in those kind of situations. Chloe says more afraid because it can still happen. Okay, so I think you're saying since you know a bit more information about this, so like more truth about the world and how it can be more dangerous than even suspected, that would make you more afraid. I can totally understand that too, because like sometimes you know how when we're little we don't have much knowledge of what's dangerous and what's not, but learning about something that's more dangerous can make you feel a bit more afraid. I can definitely relate to that. Kairin, do you have anything to add here?
You might be scared of what's going to happen because you learned about it, but after you learn about it, you know what might happen and you also know how to prepare for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you don't know things, you might feel more panicked. Like you don't know a lot about you don't know a lot of information about, say, the event at Lake Nyos, for instance. But then, since we know it's because of the carbon dioxide that's concentrated at the bottom of the lake, since we know more information about that, we can come up with solutions to prevent those kind of things. So you become less afraid, right? So it kind of depends on how you look on this kind of situation. But usually when you learn more, you're usually less afraid because you're more prepared and kind of know more, right? Okay, so if no one else has anything to add, we'll move on to a short game of Kahoot. Okay, let's try auto mode. Okay, so there's a link in the chat, and go ahead and click that. Okay, I'm going to start in like 5 seconds. You can still join after. Okay, let's get started. Okay, question 1. In the summer of 1815 in North America, the sky was dark, a volcano erupted, a huge storm killed the crops, or the temperature was very cold. And here's the text if you ever need it. Okay, so the correct answers would be a volcano erupted and the temperature was very cold. Very good. Okay, in Tunguska, an asteroid exploded, the whole town caught fire, the largest earthquake struck, or many people died from a bomb blast. Okay, so the correct answer would be that the asteroid exploded, okay? Remember how the text said, how a fiery ball streaked across the sky? So an asteroid had entered Earth's atmosphere, okay? So that would be your, that would be the answer there. So an asteroid exploded. Okay, question 3. What happened at Lake Nyos? Oh, I think there's a typo. It's supposed to be Lake Nyos. Okay. Anyway, the water was poisoned, the lake let off toxic gas, the lake turned bright blue, or the water rose and drowned many people. Very good. The lake let off toxic gas. Excess carbon dioxide. True or false? The term deafening means to be filled with noise. Okay, so this is actually true. That is the definition of the word deafening. Okay, fill in the blank. Lake Nyos was a blank blue lake in the West African country of Cameroon. Was it frothy, unconscious, remote, or serene? Which one best fits? Okay, so I can see why you would put frothy, but the word that would better suit it would be serene. Okay. So, like the calm blue lake, right? Okay, a harder question here. What is the main idea of the article? So think back, what is the main idea? Was it many natural disasters are still mysterious to scientists? No one knows how to control disasters when they happen? Earthquakes, tornadoes, and hurricanes are the deadliest natural disasters, or there are many different types of natural disasters that harm many humans. Okay, very good. That would be the main idea. That is literally what the article was talking about. Okay, how did the author organize the text? By comparing how much destruction different types of natural disasters cause, giving tips to stay safe from these natural disasters and from where they live, giving examples of lesser known natural disasters that happened, or by showing how people reacted through these natural disasters. Very good. So it gave examples, those 3 examples, right? Okay, true or false? The Tunguska event describes the event when an atomic bomb exploded in 1908. This should be easy. Okay, so it's not an atomic bomb that exploded, it was the meteorite, right? But it had the force of an atomic bomb. Okay, the year without a summer was caused by the Ice Age, the sudden release of carbon dioxide, a volcanic eruption, or a meteorite burst. Okay, so the year without a summer, remember how like this volcanic eruption created so much dust? It caused, like it blocked the sunlight. So because of this block, or because of this lack of sunlight, there's less heat that was trapped within the Earth's atmosphere, and that's why it grew colder, and that's why it's like the year without a summer. Okay. All right, podium. In second place, we have Scary Cherry. That's a nice name. And first, we have PT. Okay, good job, you two. Great round of applause for all of you. And one last thing before all of you leave, I would like to give you a poll of what our next topic should be for next class, because I have a bit trouble deciding. Okay, so we can either learn about saving sea turtles, the Ring of Fire, which has more volcanoes, Bitingly Dangerous Job, which talks about milking snakes, or we can talk about how birds survive in the cold, like in the winter, since, you know, it's getting colder outside. So I want you to pick a topic. Uh-oh. Okay. Oops. Alright, looks like most of us have answered. Okay, unfortunately, we are a bit divided here. One of you picked the Ring of Fire, one of you picked the Violently Dangerous Job, and one of you picked a Feathers Flat and Freezing. Okay, I will spin a spinner, and we'll see what our next topic will be next week. But it will be one of these 3, I assure you. Okay, so that concludes today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something new, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone. Oh, good job, Emma, for getting number 2.